What's up, watchers of the Marvel Multiverse, and welcome back to the channel. Today we'll be continuing our coverage of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, this time specifically talking about one of the major cameos in the film, Professor Charles Xavier himself, played yet again by Patrick Stewart. In Multiverse of Madness, it's not made specifically clear which iteration of Professor X we are seeing here. There have been various rumors and even reports that the Professor X that we would be seeing in Multiverse of Madness was actually the same Professor X from the X-Men animated series in the 90s, with even more evidence being added to this thanks to the theme that they played in Multiverse of Madness when Professor X initially appears. However, there have also been other fan theories indicating that this Professor X may actually be the same Professor X from the Fox X-Men universe, and that Professor X is able to transfer his consciousness across the multiverse. However, this theory seems to be highly unlikely. Thankfully today though, we have a concrete definitive answer as to which version of Professor X we are seeing here, whether or not he's the version from the animated X-Men show, the Fox X-Men films, or a completely new iteration, and this comes directly from the writer of Multiverse of Madness. This is the writer's full quote as reported by Comic Book Resource. In an interview with Variety, Walden was asked if he drew from the Fox X-Men films or the animated series in creating the version of Professor X appearing in Multiverse of Madness. Waldron replied, "A little bit of both actually. I don't know if I'm even technically supposed to get into specifics about these actors or the characters, but I worked with the performer to even talk about and making it a different version of the character overall, that character being Professor X. So it was a different version of Professor X in Multiverse of Madness. He uses a line from Days of Future Past that he says to Stephen Strange, but also we drew from the classic cartoon version of that character. He's a variant who has qualities of a bunch of different versions of Professor X from across the multiverse, but he's not one that we've seen before." This goes a long way in confirming a lot of different theories about Professor X, as well as the universe of 838. 838 is not a universe that we have in fact seen before, as many were speculating that it might be, with the most prominent theory being that this is actually the same universe that the Fox X-Men movies took place in the 90s. However, the writer confirms outright here that this is not in fact true, and this version of Professor X is not a variant that we have seen before, but at the same time confirming that he does in fact have qualities of the Professor X's that we've seen as previous iterations of the character. A lot of the original theories revolving around Professor X stem from the fact that Marvel was actually producing a brand new version of the X-Men show from the 90s that will be premiering on Disney+. And many fans speculated that due of course to the yellow chair of Professor X in Multiverse of Madness, as well as this iteration of the character, the Professor X that we saw in Multiverse of Madness would in fact be the same Professor X from this comic universe. However, according to this, it is not in fact accurate, although again this is subject to change in the future. Another interesting thing to take note here is that apparently they worked closely with Patrick Stewart in developing which iteration of the character this Professor X would be, and it was up to the writer as well as Patrick Stewart in determining that he would have elements of both the X-Men Days of Future Past and Fox X-Men universe of Professor X, as well as some from the comics and the 90s television show. But anyway, my friends, what are your thoughts on this? And what are your thoughts on this version and this iteration of Professor X being an amalgamation of several versions of the character? Thank you guys as always so much for continuing to watch and support the channel. Hit that subscribe button to assemble and join our team, and I'll hopefully see you in the next video.